The place our seven principles starts is with a reminder of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That means you, that means me, and that means every single person we encounter. So you are already worthy by the nature of your very existence. This has long been a radical position within and beyond our tradition. Universalism, the tradition that half of our present name comes from, has preached this for centuries in this country. Their language was that of universal salvation, that a God of love would damn no soul no matter what, and is where their name, Universalist, came from. The idea that everyone is whole and holy and worthy already, whether they become Unitarian Universalists or not, has some challenges. Why join a congregation at all then? What about people who cause us harm or do very bad things? Why be good ourselves or do things we'd rather not do? First, why be part of a religious community or a congregation? We join together in community to help one another and to do the things we cannot do alone. Yes, we make friends and socialize. Yes, we ourselves and our families benefit from things like religious education, classes for adults, and spaces to share our creative gifts. And amidst all those things, we help people. We form friendships and make calls when someone is going through a hard time. We organize for justice and contribute to the larger communities in which we live. We multiply the power each of us holds by being together. And we are reminded about the values we hold most dear. What about the challenge of holding up inherent worth and dignity of all when people harm us or those we care about? What about people who seem to be doing harm to our country or our world? Living lives that center the value of the inherent worth and dignity of every person are not the same as the Dutch proverb, live and let live. If we believe that all life is worthy and whole, then we must act when we see this value being violated. I see much of the legacy of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg in this light. She did not sit idly by when met with opposition to her own or to others' inherent worth and dignity. Instead, she set out to be a voice and a force to change the legal status and through the law, the lives of so many. We may not all have the same pulpit as she did to make our values into laws. However, each of us has opportunities daily to do something within the circle of our influence. We can make decisions that limit the worth and dignity of others, or we can make decisions that uphold the worth and dignity of others. Perhaps that is through protest or phone banking, writing letters, having hard conversations with loved ones. Sometimes it is about first surviving extreme situations in our own lives and knowing that we will help others do the same in the future. I believe our seven principles are not about what is easy. They lift up the things that we need to be reminded of for a reason. It is most important to remember them when things are hard, when we are hurt or grieving. This morning, many of us may be wondering about the future. When faced with someone dying whom we have pinned many of our hopes for security upon, it can be a hard thing to wonder about what comes next. There is time for grief, and as we grieve, there is also space for planning. How do we balance our first principle with the world in which we live? It comes down to two important factors that can sometimes feel at odds with one another: relationship and priorities. First, relationship. We need to build bridges to others if we hope to make an impact. Those bridges are built over Sundays, monthly small groups, Zoom gatherings, and phone calls. Making the time to get to know one another allows us to be more honest and to take some risks in sharing our hopes for the future. Relationships also lead into the second part: priorities. We hold up every person as inherently worthy. And that does not mean we have the ability to help every person in need. No one human or one congregation can. This is perhaps the harder part of living out this value in the world in which we find ourselves. There is too much injustice, too much inequity, too much uncertainty, and too much pain to be healed by us. What this principle calls us to is awareness and to action and to choices. We know that the world and our country do not reflect our value. We know that one of the ways to change this is to get involved. I've now heard from multiple places the observation that people often say that if they had lived through the civil rights movement, they know they would have been involved. Well, this is that time for our generation. The protests against police brutality, the work to ensure our democracy, the need to bring about deep changes to avoid climate catastrophe, and the calls for public health responses that save lives. This is that time, that moment. Show up to the protests and actions that you are able to. Add your voice to the calls for change sounding all around. Become a poll worker for the first time this year. Connect with Get Out the Vote organizations like powerinterfaith.org's voter engagement program, or UU the Vote, or the organizing group of your choice. Join the work of the Sunrise Movement or others for changing the public conversation about climate. Support leaders who will value the lives of every person and make choices that keep people safe during public health emergencies. And make the choices that you can to help your community be more healthy. You do not need to do all of these things, but you can choose to do something. Perhaps you already are, or perhaps you have been overwhelmed by the many simultaneous needs. I suggest that it is always better to do things with a friend. Call 3 fellow Bucksmonters and ask what they are doing, and work together for change. You can decide together what to do and know that doing something is what is important. That is what places like this are in the world to show us, that new things are possible together, that powerful things are possible together, that we can save lives together and perhaps inspire others to help more, to love more. We proclaim values that are larger than we are capable of doing alone for a reason. It means if we truly believe them, we need each other in order to make any progress towards them. If our principles could be lived out in isolation, we would not be here this morning. If our principles could be achieved today, there would be no need to gather next week. We have here the opportunity to live by our first principle, to help each other do so as well. We may not be able to save the world all by ourselves, but together we can save a piece of it and help others see that they can save a piece too. And when those pieces come together, something new exists, not something perfect, but something inherently worthy and dignified. If we live into a way of being that upholds this principle, we will not have to help each person alone. We will be a part of a resilient community of helpers, and every person will also help others too. Those relationships and priorities and the commitment to abide by our values, however imperfectly, gives way to another thing: grace, with ourselves and with those we meet along the way. May we each strive to recognize the worth and dignity inherent in every person and be part of a world that reflects this as true without exception. May we each remember the guiding lights of our ancestors and those we lift up as examples of what is possible. So may it be.